Hey everybody, welcome to Sunday and welcome to the live chat and show here. I'm glad you're with me. I am here tonight, and then tomorrow morning I leave for Abu Dhabi for the e-tron launch. It's a bit disappointing that they actually allowed everybody to publish their stories about the e-tron, so there's already information out there about the car, but I will be getting a video out to you when I get back later in the week. So stay tuned for that. I have to fly from Vancouver to Toronto, Toronto to London Heathrow, London Heathrow down to Abu Dhabi, stay one night, drive the car the next day, and then do it all on the way back. So I leave Monday, I get back Thursday, and I'm only there for really one day. So it's interesting. Okay, so a couple of things. Instagram, if you're following along on Instagram, we'll be posting pictures from there. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, go to Motormouth_auto. Facebook, the Facebook page is getting a lot of interaction from people. What I do is I post a lot of news stories, a lot of information about the car industry, some silly videos. But if you go to Facebook, if you go to Facebook and you type in Motormouth and like the page, join the chat. There's lots of people there taking part in the discussion, so that's a lot of fun. And my other YouTube channel is called Watch This, all about wristwatches. And I must admit, I let it sit for a long time without doing any new videos, but I'm committed to doing new videos. So the channel is called Watch This, and I will put the description below here after the live show is done, okay? So that's what's going on. All right, let's get into the live chat and see what's up. First question from Gordon says, hey Zach, do you think GM's closing in North America is more GM's fault or the union's fault? I don't think it's the union's fault. I think it's just the way that the industry is going. I'll turn my phone down. I think it's just the way the industry, hey, I got my notification on my phone. Motormouth's going live. Isn't that funny? So no, it's got nothing to do with the union. It's got everything to do with the fact that the auto industry is changing so quickly. So it was only a few years ago where cars still dominated the space in sales. Now it's almost 75% light duty trucks. So that includes pickup trucks and SUVs, and it's only 25% cars. And that's going to erode even quicker now that a lot of these brands are getting out. FCA's getting out for the most part with cars. Same thing for Ford, and now General Motors is getting rid of a bunch of different brands. So yeah, I don't think it's the union's fault. Charlottetown Spud is back. Good to have you back again. Veloster and or Volkswagen GTI seem to be close competitors. Did you enjoy one better than the other? Also wondering if the third door in the N is big enough for small kids to get in and out of. Well, I did do a review of the Veloster N when they had it at the track, and I did do a review a few weeks before that of the Veloster Turbo. And my actual headline for the Veloster Turbo was a GTI alternative. So is the third door big enough for small kids to get in and out of? This really depends whether these kids are able to do up their own seat belts. If they're in child seats, depends if they're in little booster seats or if they're in actual harness seats. That's going to be a real deal breaker. The cargo area is useful, no, but little kids could get in and out of the third door, no issue at all. But yeah, it's not as practical as the GTI. And I did like the Veloster N a lot. I thought it was loads of fun, and it's a lot of value considering how much horsepower and just how performance oriented the car is. And it's just about the same price as an Autobahn version of a GTI, so it's definitely a car you should drive. Next question is, hey Zach, what's your opinion on the Chevy Camaro facelift versus the previous model? I work at a GM dealer and nobody seems to like it. Yeah, well, whenever you make changes to a car that definitely has an iconic look, people are not going to like it. It really comes down to the headlights look kind of small for the car and maybe look a little bit too feminine, not as masculine and chunky and assertive looking. So it all comes down to taste. It's interesting, one of the cars that they're axing there at GM is the CT6, the full-size Cadillac. And I have to say, when they brought that car out about 4 years ago, it has got to be one of the prettiest cars for a full-size sedan. I'd put it up against anything in the industry. when it comes to just aesthetics. It's just a nice looking car. And they just did a facelift on, they're axing the car, but just announced the 2019 facelift. And the facelift is terrible. It was like you had a beautiful car and then you went and ruined it. And now they're getting rid of it altogether. So it's changing very, very quickly. Fatir says, in the U.S., Toyota says there will only be an $800 difference between the hybrid and the non-hybrid versions of the RAV4. Will this be the same in Canada? If yes, is it worth even getting the non-hybrid? Well, Toyota, we were there with Toyota Canada. Cyril Dimitris, Vice President of Sales and Marketing there, basically said they want to double hybrid sales and they want to have a lower barrier to moving into the hybrid. So about 10% in the Canadian market, because that's where I live and I know the market better here, is 10% is hybrids. They hope to go to 20, but we don't have the official price. They did say the gap would be much, much slower. I would say if it's an $800 difference in the US, it'll be $1,000 or $1,100. We're hoping it's going to be very close here. JSI is saying GM is closing plants at the early stages to reduce overhead in its upcoming recession. Inverted yield curve tells us 14 months away on average. So this is technical stuff. The yield curve is when you get a change in the bond yields. There's a signal in the bond market that forecasts an upcoming recession, and he's saying it's about 14 months away. General Motors, they made 2 announcements over the last couple of months. One was getting rid of a whole bunch of the white-collar workers, managers, middle managers at head office and around the world, axing, I think it was 15,000 of those people, then laying off all of the plant workers and closing these plants. They want to right-size the company for if there is a downturn. And General Motors has been making money over the last few years. It's a very well-managed company when it comes to profit now that they've come out of Chapter 11 restructuring in 2009 and 10. So yeah, I'm with JS1. The market, the stock market, if you look at the stock market over the last week or so, is just in the tank. And then when you look at that and correlate it with what the bond yield is telling us, we could be heading into a recession here in the next couple of years. I don't think so. I don't think so personally, but you never know. Hi Zach, what's your opinion with car brokers? I'm not one to haggle with prices. I was thinking of using a broker. Any recommendation for Montreal? Thanks. Well, Jimbo, this leads me perfectly into Car Cost Canada. If you've been watching any new videos on the channel, you see the little ad that shows up at the beginning. Car Cost Canada is a way for you to get some powerful information. And by the way, when you go to Car Cost Canada, your first search is free and you can buy bundles of searches and they're really inexpensive. So the name actually tells you everything. Car Cost Canada. You get the cost of the car, what the dealer pays for the car. So we'll pick a number, say the car is $20,000 and the dealer pays 18. I don't know that I'm not picking a certain car, but say that's the case. You already know what the dealer pays. Plus you see any rebates that are offered by the manufacturer, any hidden discounts. Sometimes there's discounts that the dealer and the manufacturer are aware of, but the public isn't, any reduced financing rates or what have you. So my advice to you is you can do this yourself. Go to Car Cost Canada, type in the vehicle you want. We'll pick here's a perfect example. Right now, this coming week is when the new RAV4s are going to be coming to the dealerships, okay, the middle of December. Well, the existing 2018 stock, they're going to have some discounts to get those cars off the lot. That's a perfect time to buy. So you can go and search up maybe the trim that you want, and they even have people that work there will help introduce you to a dealer and get you a favorable price, and you just basically walk in, sign the papers, and head out. So check it out, Car Cost Canada. So there you go. Thanks for leading me into that, by the way. Brigitte says, hi Zach, any plans of Suzuki to launch Jimny in Canada? No, Suzuki left with their tail between their legs several years ago now. Suzuki, for those that are not aware, has like a 50% market share in India. Like 1 out of every 2 cars in India sold is Suzuki. Couldn't make a go of it here in North America, but no, you're not going to see any Suzuki cars here. JS1 says, thoughts on the 25% tax on cars in British Columbia and how it affects luxury sales. Well, for those that are not aware, they put a luxury tax up to 25% on cars costing, I can't remember what the threshold is now, $125,000 and $150,000. It's very steep. And what happened, it came in, I believe, in April, and they brought a whole bunch of sales forward. That means that people were buying high-end cars. All they had to do was pay for them and order them, and then they could get them without the tax. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of cars that are sold just below those threshold amounts. This really only affects a very small percentage of car sales, so it's not going to affect the greater market, but certainly luxury sales are going to take a hit, and I think high-end luxury is going to take a hit. Remember though, excuse me, for people that are buying $200,000 cars, if they really, really want it, they're going to pay. Jude says, are you reviewing the Q8? I have reviewed the Q8. I had a chance to drive it in June. Go back to the channel, type in Q8, and you will find the review. So go and watch the review of the Q8. It's on there. Let me have a jumping ahead here. VJ says, hey Zach, any idea when the VW Arteon will hit dealers in Canada? It's long overdue from the launch. I was, if you watch the channel regularly, lucky enough to go in August to Wolfsburg to see, Autostadt there. It's like the Disneyland for cars. And the car that we had a chance to drive when we were in Germany was the Arteon, and got a chance to drive it on the Autobahn. And it's a wonderful car. It's like the Golf R running gear on a coupe-like mid-sized to large car. A really nicely executed car. And when we were in Wolfsburg, there was a ton of them on the road. So the car was supposed to be here now. It has been pushed back. That's basically what we're looking at now. And I think it has to do with the worldwide emissions testing that they're doing in Europe on each individual model to get certification. Things have been pushed back. So I have heard January now, but probably best to think first quarter of 2019, but the Arteon has been pushed back until the new year. Why did Polestar go their own way from Volvo? Do you see them in 10 years being a successful company? Who knows? I mean, there's so much competition in the industry. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Things are changing so quickly. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. They're going to be doing high-performance cars that are full electric, and we'll have to see how that goes. But then again, everybody's announced those. Fatir says, I want to keep a car long term. Cash or finance is the obvious choice, but is there ever a way that leasing and then buying at the end of the lease can be a better option? I like leasing for a couple of reasons. The only reason why leasing can be a better option is cash flow, of course. If you want to amortize the sale of the car over a longer period of time. Now, please do not do these long-term finance terms where you can do 7 or 8 years. Don't do that, because your car is always what we call in the industry upside down. You always owe more than the car is worth, okay? So leasing lets you do that longer-term amortization, but it almost always guarantees the value of the car is pretty much what you've paid, because it's a contract. You've signed a piece of paper and you've agreed to a price, and the car company that's leasing you the car has agreed to the price. So you know at any given month what the actual buyout of that car is, and you know exactly at the end of the 3 or 4 years exactly what the value of that car is. And then you can see in the marketplace if it's higher or lower, and then you can buy the car out or release it then. So there is one other upside, and that's what's called accelerated depreciation. For example, say you had a $40,000 car. That's not hard to do these days. You drive the car off the lot, and 6 months later, whack, you get hit in a pretty bad accident, and it costs $15,000 to fix the car. The insurance company isn't going to write off a $40,000 car for a $15,000 repair. They're going to fix the car. What happens to a car that's had that big a whack? It's depreciated in the market. If you're going to buy a used car, one that's had a $15,000 accident, one that hasn't, well, the one that hasn't is going to be worth more. But what leasing does is it protects you. If the car was in a particularly bad accident and was repaired, well, they absorb that depreciation. So at the end of the lease, you can give the keys back to the company and they absorb any depreciation you don't. So that's just one upside. The other one is taxes. If you're taking a loan and financing a $40,000 car over 7 years, you're borrowing money as you're borrowing against the taxes. The taxes are rolled into the overall amount. When you lease, you pay the taxes every month. So you're deferring the tax on a monthly basis. Greetings from Puerto Rico. Hey, nice to have you here. Your thoughts on Alfa Romeo Giulia TI Sport. That's from Ezra. Well, I think that the Alfa Romeo products are first rate when it comes to handling and performance, and I think that they've done a really good job on that front. And you can go and look up Alfa Romeo awards, and you'll see they have won awards from all the kinds of publications from around the world for just that, for handling dynamics and performance. The question mark a lot of people have is reliability long term, and that is another perfect example of a vehicle that you should consider leasing, because you know exactly what the value is going to be after 3 or 4 years, and if there's any issues with it, you can give the car back. But when it comes to handling, absolutely first rate. Dale says, what was your favorite Suzuki car SUV that you were reviewed? Any chance you would come back to North America? Well, the little vehicle that was fantastic for me was the Suzuki Swift, the little car in the early 90s. It was when I first started reviewing cars in the early 90s. So it would have been around what year would it be? 94, maybe, 93. The 1.6 turbo Suzuki Swift was an absolute blast to drive, a little hatchback car. And then they were known, of course, for the Sidekick and the Samurai. They were fun little vehicles, but they're not coming back. Peak Time Racing, what's your opinion on the upcoming, I don't know how you say this, is it Rivian or Rivian SUV and truck? So for those that aren't aware, at the Los Angeles show a week or so ago, this company introduced an SUV and a truck, all electric, a pickup truck I should say, and a beautiful looking SUV. And I gotta say, I love the styling. It's a Rivian I think is how you say it, Rivian. Beautifully done. The interiors, just stunning, really look high quality to me. And apparently they have 4 centers around the world now. They're based mostly in Michigan. They say they have a lot of capital to put these vehicles into production. So I think it's going to be exciting to see. And they're smart. They go right into the SUV and the pickup truck space. Why? Car companies are introducing electric cars when nobody's buying cars, they're buying SUVs. I don't know. Like if I was at General Motors, I would be reskinning the Chevy Bolt as like a Chevy Track size or bigger SUV like yesterday. And I'm sure they're working on it. Have you heard the news? Volkswagen and Ford might be setting up an alliance. That could be interesting to watch. Sebastian says, are you going to be reviewing the Ford Edge ST soon? I was invited to go and drive that product at the launch. I couldn't make it. Yes, when it's here and I can get my hands on it for sure, I'll be doing that. I hear it's fantastic. Nicholas says, hey Zach, looking for a sporty SUV. What are your thoughts on the RDX A-Spec, BMW M Sport, or Jaguar F-Pace? Well, you're mixing a little bit of apples and oranges here. I'm not sure the X3 M Sport, is that with the M40 engine? If it's of those 3, for me, hands down, it's the inline 6-cylinder from the BMW. BMW has been producing inline 6-cylinders since Moses was a child. It's a beautiful engine. It is fantastic. So if it's that, then yes. If it's the 4-cylinder turbo, then I think that the RDX is a pretty compelling package when you look at price. Because as you know, when you go and you buy a BMW, you have to tick so many different boxes, because what they do is they put one feature you want in one package and another one in another package. And by the time you walk out the door, you've added like $10,000+ in extras. So keep that in mind. F-Pace is due for a refresh. It's been up for a few years now. So if you're not in a rush, I would wait to see what they do with that. But if it's the X3, the M40 engine, that's the one to get. Nicholas says, when will the RAV4 be for sale in Canada? There it is. I mentioned it earlier. If you're just tuning in now, they told me at the launch it'll be the second week in December. We're heading into the second week in December. So maybe contact your dealer and find out, but I'm sure it's going to be right around this week, by the end of the week, hopefully. Not the hybrid. Hybrid's coming in the spring. Shane says, better classic, second generation Audi S8 or E39 BMW? I don't know. I owned an E39 BMW. I had a 740i S with the M parallel wheels, the one that was used in the James Bond movie. Love that car, but I think if it's just straight power, the S8 is the way to go. But you need a whole lot of money to keep these cars running. Expensive. If you start, really expensive cars to keep running. So when you look at them and you get intoxicated with all of the car you get for an inexpensive price, they've depreciated so much. Always remember, you're going to spend a lot of money to keep that car going. Pablo says, do you think the government in Canada will tax SUVs more and trucks in the future? Well, I'm a bit torn about getting people to reduce the fuel that they use and getting people to reduce the carbon that they emit. Okay, so global warming, or not global warming, climate change. Everybody wants to reduce the amount of CO2 that they emit into the atmosphere. Now, one way governments are going about it is what we're seeing in Europe with jacking up the price of fuel. And then you've got riots in the streets of Paris over the last few weekends. Everybody with their yellow vests. There's a big controversy here in Canada, for those that aren't aware, introducing a federal carbon tax, putting a price on fuel. I'm kind of a believer in the European model when it comes to a road tax and putting a price on the size and the displacement of the vehicle that you own. Because in North America, we overbuy our vehicles. You don't need to have a big SUV to move your kids around the neighborhood, taking them to school and hockey practice or soccer practice. Just a little runaround car would do that. But no, everybody's got to have a big SUV. I'm the same way. I do. But if you say, okay, vehicles with engines larger than 2 liters would pay this much. Vehicles with larger than 3 liters would pay this much, and that's exactly what they do in Europe. And people there drive smaller cars, and that's why you see brands like Volkswagen will have a 1.3, a 1.4, a 1.5, a 1.6. They have all of these different engines they put in vehicles like the Golf and the Polo based on the tax of that country. It's another way to do it, and maybe a combination of the two wouldn't be a bad way. I haven't heard anything about it, but we could go that way. When is the new Q3 going to be released? It is going to be released in the second quarter of next year. So think late spring into summer. Probably May, June is when the Q3 will be coming. Excellent product. I think the new Q3 is dynamite. It looks great. And there's a review on the channel. Go watch it. Par says, my friend is shopping for a used GTI DSG for 20 grand. I'm suggesting an Elantra Sport for lesser money. Any other cars to look at in the segment? Well, the GTI is kind of the gold standard. It was the original hot hatch. I would agree with you, the Elantra Sport. Now, here's the thing is, I don't like the Elantra Sport, the GT, the hatchback, if that's the one you're thinking of. I do like the sedan. So for me, the sedan is the way to go. I think that the GTI is like the perfect little car. It's hard to beat that. Try the Elantra though, it's a great car. Oh, sorry, you're American. Elantra. Bavin says, hey Zach, are really worth buying an extended warranty on cars? Does it depend on brand? Now here's the thing. When you buy a brand new car, you do not have to buy the extended warranty at that time. You should find out from the dealer the cost to buy the warranty now and the cost to buy it when the original manufacturer warranty expires. And you can do that. Say it's a 3 or 4 year warranty. Well, buy the extended warranty in 3 years when it's just about to end. And here's the thing, life changes. So you're going to spend thousands of dollars more. A lot of people roll that with the taxes and the extended warranty into their monthly payment. That can get really expensive. You're paying for something you can't even utilize yet. So, shuffling that off towards the end when the regular warranty is done, it might be the way to go. And as I mentioned, life changes. Hey, maybe 3 years, I don't know your situation. Maybe you meet a girl and she becomes pregnant and then you got to sell the car and buy a minivan. I don't know. Stuff happens. So and in the resale market, you don't really get that much more for the extended warranty. You will get something, but you're never going to get the whole thing back. So you don't have to buy it right at the time of sale. But find out what the difference in cost is, okay? David Lee, hi Zach. In terms of fuel economy and reliability, which three-row SUV is the best? This is easy. Toyota Highlander. The Toyota hybrid system, bulletproof. Highlander, absolutely functional. Fun to drive? No, it's not. My phone keeps buzzing. I'm gonna move it. It's not fun to drive. There's no sport and SUV in that vehicle. There certainly is utility, and it is a vehicle. But the Toyota Highlander hybrid is the way to go. Charlottetown Spud says, what was your first car? Mine was a 91 Honda Prelude SR5. Love that car, SR5 Speed. That was a great car, by the way. When I first started reviewing cars in 1992, I remember those Preludes. You are not going to believe what my first car was. My dad and I bought this. He saw it. I grew up in Toronto on Queen Street West, before Queen Street West was the cool and hip place, right near, what's the famous club? Is it the Elmo Combo down there? Right near there. And wait for it, a 1949 Buick Super. If anybody's ever seen the Dustin Hoffman, Tom Cruise movie called Rain Man, where they drive across the country and, that's the car. That's what I had. That was the 1949 Buick. I had the Super. I'm trying to remember what the top one was called. Anyway, I had that car for years. I used to drive it to high school. It was so big. I put all my friends in it. We had it for about 15 years. We had this great plan. We were going to restore it. Never happened. But anyway, it was a really cool car. Charles Ing, hey Zach, going back to my favorite clutch feel shifter combo question from last week. I have an 09 STI and it has a firm clutch feel and notchy shifter, which I like. Any new cars like that? Or that's a tough one. One car that I would say has probably the best clutch shifter feel is the MX-5 Miata. It is just so, it's really good. I love the Mustang. But clutch feel and shifter feel is very personal. I always say to people, I want to learn to drive on a car. A Honda Civic is about as easy as it's going to get. But that pressure point on the clutch, it's so spongy and vague. It's just so easy to get the clutch to travel and engage and away you go. That is good. Of course, Porsche with the 911 and the Boxster Cayman, they have excellent transmission feel. The clutch on the base Cayman and Boxster, I think the flywheel's quite small. It's easy to stall it. Yeah, those are some choices. John Snow, hey Zach, I follow a very popular YouTube GM owners in the US, and he said that the Chevy Camaro is going to be axed. And he had been told by high GM direct insider going to electric big time. Well, that's exactly what they telegraphed to everybody with the closure of these plants and the restructuring of the company. GM is betting big time on electric vehicles. They have, a fairly early market advantage with electrification with the Volt and the Bolt. And what they need to do is they need to, if they really want to go big into this, amplify it into many, many more models. As I mentioned, if I was in charge of General Motors, I would have had an SUV style crossover based on the Bolt like yesterday, like a little Chevy Trax or a Chevy Equinox electric. That's a no-brainer. That's what should be out on the road yesterday, using that technology. And the Bolt, not the Volt, the Bolt technology works. It's great. Here's the thing. There was so much confusion between the Volt and the Bolt. It's good that they're getting rid of the Volt because now we can just have to concentrate on the Bolt. But that's what they've said. And if people are not buying cars, I think it would be a real shame if they got rid of a sporty coupe like that. I don't know what the sales are for Camaro, but yeah, it could happen. I think sales are even worse for Corvette, but Corvette is going to be redone. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. John Burrows, have you come across any older cars on the road you were surprised to still see? I was following a Dodge Aries wagon recently, and look to be in good shape considering the winters in Ontario. Well, John, I got to tell you, that's one thing I've been meaning to do is take my phone when I take the dog for a walk in the morning. I live here in Vancouver on the West Coast, and there are so many older cars on the road here, like cars you would never see in Eastern Canada or Eastern United States with all the salt and the snow, because they just disappear and rust away. But here on the West Coast, there are so many older cars. So I might start a new hashtag for my Instagram, cars on my walk, because there's loads of them. There's lots of old cars around here. So it's not that uncommon to see older vehicles on the road. But there is, by the way, somebody a block and a half from me when I walk my dog in the morning, and he's got an original K car, which is cool and not cool at the same time. Hey Zach, thoughts on the QX60? Thinking of getting a new 18 with the premium package for $16,000 off. Well, that sounds like a hell of a deal. So the QX60 is the Pathfinder, basically. And that's something you might want to consider too, is getting a fully loaded Pathfinder. It might be even less than buying a QX60. That is their best seller, by the way. The QX50 has just been introduced this past summer. So yeah, and I think the styling of the QX50 looks really good. The QX60, you have to drive it. Please do drive it. Don't just buy it because it's a great deal. It has a continuously variable transmission. It's a chain-driven unit. It has the capacity to tow 5,000 pounds. The Pathfinder version of that platform can tow 6,000 pounds, but that's a big discount. You have to remember that now that we're marching towards the end of the year, that vehicle in 2 weeks will now be a year old. So that's why dealers often put incentives in place to get rid of 2018 stock. So I'm not sure where you're from, but as I referenced earlier, if you're in the Canadian market, go to carcostcanada.com and search for that vehicle so you know exactly what it is. It's the premium package of the 2018 Infiniti QX60. You're going to be able to find, when you go to Car Cost Canada, the dealer's cost, okay, what the dealer actually paid for the car. That's very powerful information. Any rebates, so you're saying 16,000 off, there might be even more money that you're not aware of. So do that. Son of Tamrol, good evening, Zach. Are you familiar with a dealer called Kirby? If so, any positive, negative prices are great. I don't know of Kirby, I apologize. Let's jumped ahead on me here. Okay, due diligence required on the QX60. Yes, that's what I said. Please go and drive it and find out more about it. John Snow says, thanks for your Car Cost Canada info. Jeff Friars has been helping me greatly. I've been forced to deal with greater GTA as London, Ontario dealers just won't deal with Car Cost World. Well, here's the thing is, if you want to use Car Cost Canada to arrange for you to get a dealer with one of their preferred dealers, it might not be exactly where you live, but hey, listen, if you're going to get a screaming deal and it's a 2-hour drive from Toronto, I lived in London for 7 years. I know that's a boring as hell drive to drive up the 401, but you're going to save some money. If you do not want to have them introduce you to a dealer, you can get the cost, as I mentioned, and then go in with that piece of paper to your London dealer and say, here's what the actual cost for that car is that you paid for. Here are all the discounts. Let's talk. So that's up to you. But for me, if I was going to save thousands of dollars on a car, thanks to Car Cost Canada, and I had to go up to Toronto, hey, go have lunch, go take in a hockey game. You won't get tickets. Sebastian says, I heard the Ford Flex will be discontinued. That's true, but the Lincoln MKT will live on. Also, the rumors that the upcoming Ford Explorer will replace the Flex. Is this true? Well, the Flex is absolutely one of the best vehicles Ford makes in terms of utility. It is a big box. Often people say it looks like a hearse. I kind of think it's fun looking. If you get it with the EcoBoost 3.5 liter, I think it's 365 horsepower, goes like stink. That's based on the old Volvo S80 platform, just so you know, because Volvo, Ford used to own Volvo. They took everything the best from Volvo, put it in their vehicles, and then sold it to the Chinese. But great platform, great power if you get the higher performance version, and inside, absolutely huge. Now here's the thing. that is a perfect time to get a screaming deal on one of these. I was actually going to bring this up. All of these cars that are going to be discontinued, you know, General Motors has announced they're getting rid of the Cruze, they're getting rid of the CT6, the Volt, all of these different models. Ford is going to be getting rid of all these cars and so on and so on. And if you don't mind driving a car, and why wouldn't you? Because these are new cars, there are going to be some screaming deals on cars. If you just want basic transportation, maybe you want to buy a car for some young person as their first car, there are going to be some screaming deals on these cars. They're going to have like a big X on them. Nobody's going to want them. And when no one wants them, that's when you're going to save money. So if you're just looking for transportation, that could be the way to go. Ted S., have you driven, oh, somebody's asking, you've driven the Arteon and the A5 Sportback. Well, the Arteon is bigger than the A5. It sort of straddles between the A5 and the A7. I used to own an A7. The Arteon on size was actually similar to the A7. It's a nice car. So basically you're talking about what do you want to spend. You can get a fully loaded Arteon for less than an A5. So that's something to consider. And I think the A5 has 252 horsepower and the Arteon has just a little bit more. It's slightly detuned from the Golf R, but yeah, I would drive them both, see which one you like. The nice thing about the Arteon, it's coming in full whack. It's got everything in it. I think there's one tech package for the forward collision warning and all that, but pretty much everything's in. Kirk says, nice Impreza 22B desktop. I guess you're talking about the pictures in the background there. Hey, Zach, I'm looking into getting a used 09 Outback with 220,000 kilometers. I do intend to take it to my mechanic to have it checked, but anything particular that I think I should watch out for? Well, what I would do is I wouldn't just take it to your mechanic. I would take it to a Subaru specialist. If it's not a dealer, there's got to be somebody that specializes in fixing Subarus. And if that's not the case, take it to the dealer. Because the dealer is going to be, or the Subaru specialist is going to be a much better judge of where the condition of the car is and any potential pitfalls. Now, the other thing you should do also, so this car is going to be 10 years old in just a few weeks. You need to go and search a Subaru forum for any outstanding issues with that car. So just know, though, that you're getting into an expensive part of a vehicle's life. 220,000 kilometers, there's a potential for more things to go wrong as the car gets into that cycle where parts wear out. You might need a starter, you might need, whatever it is. Things start to break. So keep that in mind. But please get it inspected, and I would find somebody that specializes in Subarus. Are you doing a review on the BMW 640xi Gran Turismo? Maybe. I'll have to see if they have one in the fleet. It's funny because people were asking about the Camaro earlier. I have begged General Motors. When can I get a Camaro to drive? When can I get a Corvette to drive? Not available. So they don't give us everything. BMW is really good, though, with their press cars, so I'll have to ask them about that. They never invite me on anything, but they're good with the press cars. Jason, your opinion on hydrogen-based automobiles. Can hydrogen compete with the inevitable domination by battery-based EVs? There is a huge argument going on about this. And it's interesting because I live in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada in the province of British Columbia, and they just came out with their new green initiative. And Toyota, so the day they announced it, Stephen Beattie, the vice president of Toyota Canada, put out a statement congratulating the province for their green initiatives. And part of the reason why Toyota was happy is because they're including in their future development for green transportation hydrogen. Because we can't just focus on battery electric vehicles and using the electric system. Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and other brands are pushing forward with hydrogen technology. But just like for the early stages of the implementation of the EV charging grid, we really need to have that kind of support from government for hydrogen filling stations. So, for example, this is something a lot of people don't know. Do you know how many Mirai, Toyota hydrogen Mirais are driving on the streets of California? Think about that. How many hydrogen Toyota Mirai cars are driving in California right now? 3,000. Now, that's nothing when you look at the number of cars on the road in California, but that's a hell of a lot of Mirais. And they're all clustered around filling stations. So if we can get to a situation where we have filling stations like we do now that offer hydrogen along with other fuels, well, filling up your car in 3 to 5 minutes and driving for up to 1,000 kilometers on one fill, like you do now with an efficient car, I think it's a good way to go. So hopefully it's going to be in lockstep. And they're great. They're great to drive. Herbert says, not directly vehicle related, but what's your go-to for wiper blades? I have tried aftermarket wiper blades, and I have tried original equipment manufacturer wiper blades. And I always find, and sometimes you make a good choice with the aftermarket ones, but I find, depending on the car, that the original equipment wiper blades typically are the best for that car. And you know the new, so in the old days, you used to have a wiper blade with like 3 metal prongs, and then they would go like this. Now they just have one, and the wiper blade is this plastic that curves over the windshield. Those ones are really temperamental if they're not right, and they chatter on the windshield. They go, da, 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 da. You know that awful noise you get? So I don't have a particular brand in mind, but I've had my best luck with going back to the original ones. How do new GM truck fuel efficiency go down compared to the model it replaced? Well, one of the big pushes is that the pickup trucks are much lighter, like a huge reduction in weight, the reduction in mass. You think about an F-150, when they brought out the aluminum F-150, they saved 750 pounds just out of the body in white without anything in it, just the body itself. Same thing's happening at General Motors and FCA. Then you add in the new technology with engines. So cylinder management makes a massive difference in pickup trucks when you can take a V8 and switch off half of the cylinders, and now you're running basically a 4-cylinder. Ford has the ability with their EcoBoost engines to downsize the engines. Those engines can be thrifty if you're not into the throttle all the time. If you're utilizing all the torque from the turbocharged engine, they can suck fuel even worse than the engines they replaced. So a big part of it is mass reduction. So that's how they do it. More gears. 6 speeds, now it's 8 speeds, now it's 10 speeds in the F-150 and the General Motors trucks. And by the way, that new 10-speed automatic is an actual co-development between General Motors and Ford. So they do get along on some level, but that's about it. I'm wondering whether the new Honda Passport will be a competitor for the Acura RDX. I was doing some digging around on this, and it looks to me, just by looking at it, and they want to have an off-road rugged vehicle, I think that the Passport is based on the Ridgeline. You think about the Honda pickup truck, and you put a back on it, not a Ridgeline anymore, now a Passport. So I was reading a lot of articles to try and find out the basis for it, but I'd almost bet that it's a Ridgeline. That's what it is. Is it going to be a competitor to the RDX? I don't think so. It's not going to have the interior refinement, that's for sure. Honda Insight, no reviews yet. I have a major confession to make. I did have the Honda Insight, but I was traveling so much that week. I basically went and picked the car up, brought it home. I drove 1 or 2 errands with it, and then at the end of the week after I had been traveling, I drove it back. I didn't have a chance to review it. So I have to get the car back. Bad on me, but yeah. I got to tell you though, I think the Honda Insight looks better than the Honda Civic. Let's talk about the rear end of the 911. Ugly, I think so. I would have to say I disagree with you. Have you seen the pictures of the new 911, the 992? I think it is absolutely gorgeous. Now, I'm going to be going to the launch at the end of January. I have actually a cool back-to-back trip. End of January, I'm flying to Seville, Spain to drive the new 992, the new 911. Then I fly home for one night, and then I go back to Quebec to drive the Cayenne S and the Cayenne Turbo in the snow. So that should be fun. So going from warm Seville, Spain to Quebec to drive in the snow. But anyway, I was talking to the PR person at Porsche, and he says, what do you think of the new 911? I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And when I go and I get a chance to speak to the designers and the engineers, when I go to the launch, the one thing I want to know is what I think they absolutely nailed with the new 911 is the ratio of the fenders to the wheels. Even though the car has the same wheelbase, it just looks more proportionate. The 991 looked kind of too big and too long. I think they've shortened the overhangs a little bit, and the way the fenders flare out over the wheels, it just looks so hot. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the proportions of the old 993. So the wheel to fender ratio, whatever they've done, I'm going to find out, but I think it's just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. And the back of it with the light bar across the back, you might not like it. I think it looks hot. Hot, hot, hot. Hot, 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 hot. Sebastian, you're hogging the time here, dude. You're getting so many questions in here. Let other people get in here, but I will answer your question. If you have another one, I'm going to skip by. Since you drove the new Q3 in Europe, do you know if the upcoming there'll be an upcoming QRS? I have no idea. They don't tell me what the model cadence is going to be. If you look at the vehicles that we typically get in North America, RS versions of SUVs, no. We get S versions, but no, not RS. I really don't think so. Have you heard any details on the upcoming electric Porsche Taycan and possible release date? Do you think it will compete well with Tesla competitors? Hell yeah, I think it's going to compete very well with that. You have to wait and see. And let's hope that I get invited to go to the launch of that one. As I mentioned, I'm going tomorrow to drive the e-tron, the Audi e-tron in Abu Dhabi, getting up early in the morning, fly to Toronto, then to London Heathrow, and then to Abu Dhabi to drive that. So I'll have a video at the end of the week. Is it going to compete with Tesla? Yeah, that's goal number one. It has to be better than Tesla, and it has to be a Porsche. So a couple of things they've said. You know, the ludicrous mode and the launch control they have in the Tesla is limited because the drive unit can get overheated. Porsche says that won't be an issue. The number one thing with Teslas also is at high speeds, for long periods of time, the car can't sustain that. And Porsche says our car is going to be able to do that. In addition, they're going to have much faster charging. Now, where it's going to be available, I don't know, but you're going to be able to get, I think, 80% charge in 15 minutes. So, yeah. And what Tesla can't do in any of their vehicles, and I see them all the time, is their interiors are shit. They just have terrible looking interiors. You take the big screen away, it's like 1992 Camry on the inside. It's so bad. I look at those Model 3s and I look inside them and I'm like, I know it's the cult of Tesla, I get it. But man, the interiors are terrible. And that's the one thing Porsche does. It's going to be beautiful on the inside. Is Honda going to bring... Okay, Sebastian, I told you. Enough with the questions. No, by the way, that's the answer. Will says, just replaced our Subaru wagon with an 18 Golf Sport Wagon. We have no familiarity with Volkswagen. Is the Sport Wagon essentially a stretched Golf? It's not stretched. The wheelbase is the same. All they did was they added on the back. It's a great car. You're going to love it. I think it's definitely smaller than your Outback, if that's the one you had, or Legacy Wagon. But no, the wheelbase is the same. Basically, from the rear wheels back is just a little longer. That's it. Zach, entry-level luxury S7-passenger SUV, is the Acura MDX a good choice? Well, here's the thing. If you look at the herd judgment on this, the herd has said yes, it is. Because the MDX, I just found this out this week, the MDX is the best-selling three-row mid-sized luxury SUV of all time. The greatest of all time. And one of the reasons... it was the very first mid-sized luxury crossover to come standard with 3 rows of seats. If you remember back in, I think it was the 90s, maybe a little later than that, whenever the MDX arrived, they went right to 3 rows of seats out of the gate. So yes, it's a good product. It could be argued that the head units are a little bit dated, but no, it does what it says. It's a fine vehicle. And now they have the A-Spec, and it looks great in A-Spec. I saw somebody driving the other day with one. It looked really good. When is the new Toyota 4Runner going to be coming out? I don't know. I'm going to be a guest of Toyota for the Detroit show. I'm guessing that's when they're going to show Supra. All indications are that's when it'll be shown. But I'll be asking about truck. Their trucks are so long in the tooth now. Tundra, Sequoia, 4Runner, the body-on-frame trucks need attention like yesterday. Taxes should not be based on the engine size, but annual miles or kilometers driven. Well, that's basically what a carbon tax is. If you put the price of fuel up, if you drive more, you pay more. So that's what proponents of the carbon tax would say. I'm no fan of the carbon tax. I live in a jurisdiction, the very first jurisdiction in North America to have a carbon tax is the province of British Columbia, where I live, in Vancouver. We have been paying a carbon tax for about 10 years now. And I got to tell you, I don't see any reduction in the amount of driving that's going on here. We just pay extortionately high prices for fuel. We have the most expensive fuel in North America is right here in Vancouver. We pay through the nose for our fuel. But you still see SUVs. You still see, the cars here in Vancouver. If you've never been to Vancouver, if you want to see disproportionate number of expensive cars, you come here. So all we're doing is paying more, and then what did the government do? So the government, before we had a change in government last year, the previous government said all of the money collected by the carbon tax will go into new green initiatives, whether it's windmills or whatever you want to do. But whatever, they wanted to take all of the money from that. So the new government comes in, what did they say? All of the money is now just going into general revenue for them to spend on anything they want, including pet projects to get them reelected. So don't get me started on that. I'm okay with carbon taxes if it goes to making, greener initiatives for everybody. I think carbon taxes on fuel should go direct. That money should go directly to transit. More buses, more trains, more streetcars, whatever it is. We should be improving transit, and it should never stop. When they put shovels in the ground and they build a new subway line and then they wait 25 years to do another one, they should never stop using those shovels. When you start building a subway line, it should never stop. Every year they should add another line, another station, and another station. It should never end. Could you imagine in the city where you live if they started building subways years ago and they never stopped? Every year they added 1 or 2 extra stations? Look at the infrastructure you would have. All of that carbon money, in my opinion, should be going directly towards transit. Go to Paris, go to London, go to Tokyo, go to Seoul. Real transit systems that work. Okay, I feel better now. I feel so much better I got that off my chest. Surprise K says, just want to say thanks. Your show is fantastic. Thanks for doing this for us. Well, I love doing it, and I love hearing from you. It's nice to see that the views are going up every week, which is nice. So, after a week, this live chat gets about 3,500 views, so that's good. Par says, with Volkswagen and Ford pairing, the Euro Focus ST with DSG would sell well in North America. Do you think they'll bring it back? I don't know what the plans would be. I think the reality is that if this is true and there is going to be some kind of forging, not fording, but forging of a relationship between Ford and the Volkswagen Group, there are some synergies here, of course, right? So what is it? And here's a big one. So why would Ford and Volkswagen want to align? Well, you can get around any possible tariffs that the Trump administration might put in for European cars. I mean, there's lots of bluster coming out of the White House about putting tariffs on non-North American or US-made cars. Well, if you are now an official partnership with Ford, well, those vehicles, because you're now part of an American company, are a co-owned company, those cars could roll in because they're not foreign. That's one way to look at it. And the strength that Ford has is in trucks. The strength that Volkswagen has is in cars. So there are some synergies there. And Volkswagen has a huge electrification advantage that they're investing in with the whole Volkswagen Group. So we'll have to wait and see. Plus, if Audi is included in that, then you could get some synergies with Lincoln. What are your thoughts on the new Mercedes G-Wagon? Well, there was one parked down the street the other day, and I've seen them at the auto show. You know, there's only 2 parts of that car that are carried over from the last one. The hinges on the door, and I think it was the door handle on the back. Something silly like that. Only 2 parts. The rest of it, even though it looks the same, is all new. The G-Wagon, it's a purpose-built off-road vehicle. It is like a real body-on-frame with the 3 locking differentials. It can do amazing stuff. You know, Mercedes claims it's the most capable SUV in the world. You know, Land Rover would have something to say about that, but arguably one of the best. On road, and not the new one, but the ones that I have driven the previous model, they're horrible to drive in the city and in everyday situations. You take it off road, it feels like it's where it should be. I think it looks cool. I think the new one looks really good. What have been your dream cars that you were actually able to review? My favorite car was a car that I drove this year. As you all know, I've owned two Carreras, two 911s. I love Porsche. We have a Porsche as our family car and our business car. I love Porsche. So my favorite car was the car that I drove this past May. It was the 911 GT3 with the touring package, without the big wing on the back. I absolutely love that. Is just full stop the car for me. That is the perfect car. The 911 is so useful. You can drive it every single day. It's got the big trunk in the front. It's got two little seats in the back if you want to take something extra in the back or put kids back there. Plus, it revs to 9,000 RPM, and it just sounds so freaking amazing. So, yeah, that is the car. It's moving around on me again. Okay. John So says, funny, I just did that. I presented my Car Cost Canada info and they flat out said no. I think they were freaked out that I had so much info. Not to mention they have a dealer holdback on the car as well. So I think John's mentioning, you know, going to Car Cost Canada, getting the actual price and going into the dealer. So go to another dealer. That's what I would do, or use them to do the deal for you. Paul says, GLC 63 or Macan Turbo or G63, best way to go for a new purchase. Well, your life doesn't suck if these are your options. What would you go for? I think the GLC 63 is hot, man. That's pretty cool. I think that would be the one I'd get. That's the one I'd get. Josh says, you can drive anything except low sports cars here in the snow. Even then, you see the odd one out with snow tires. Lots of people are driving Honda Civics, Toyotas, and Corollas just fine. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but I say that all the time. People say, oh, there was a question last week. Somebody says, I live in Calgary. I need to have all-wheel drive. No, you don't. You don't need all-wheel drive. You need to use your brains and buy a good set of winter tires. And that's all you need, because as Josh says, you see plenty of front-wheel drive Civics and Corollas. And I grew up in an era where all-wheel drive wasn't an option unless you had a real 4x4, like a Jeep. The original SUVs, like the original 4Runner with a locking, you had to get out and turn the locks on the front hubs. So those, you know, everybody drove with rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. And we all got around, and the tires were nothing compared to what you have today. Buy yourself a good set of winter tires, the best thing you can do. Thoughts on the G70? Why should I not buy one? There's no reason not to buy it. I think it's a great car. Okay, so the G70 is I win Motor Trend Car of the Year. It's going to win all kinds of awards. The G70 is just, for value, what you get with all of that power, it's just an amazing car, and it comes really nicely fitted. So I suggest you call Genesis, get them to come by and do the valet treatment and take it for a drive. The only thing is residual value. Okay, that is what's it going to be worth after 3 or 4 years. That might be an opportunity to go and see what their leases are like. Now, I'm not sure what kind of active packages they have with leasing, but that's the big question mark. Okay, I think we're kind of running out of time here. This is one from Roger. Enjoy your channel. We have a full driving review of the Cadillac XT4. There is a review of the XT4 on the channel. I went to the launch in Seattle late summer, so go and watch that. If you're thinking of one where I get it here to drive, if I get it back, I will, but please go and watch that video. Okay, once again, I'm off to Abu Dhabi tomorrow to test drive the e-tron. Please go to Facebook and like Motormouth, the page. There's an active group of people on there that are discussions. All of the different things I post, industry stuff is quite interesting. Instagram, I'm going to be putting some stuff up from my trip this week from Abu Dhabi. So go to Instagram, Motormouth_auto. You'll find it there. And my watch channel is called Watch This. Clever, right? So if you can go over there and like that, if you're into wristwatches at all, I'd love for you to go and check that channel out as well. So that's all the time we have. I will be here next week. No, wait a second. No, next week is family dinner. So what I'm going to do is next Sunday is a no-go. I'll push it to Monday. We have a family dinner next Sunday. So I'll push this live chat to the following day, which is the 17th of December. So until then, my friends, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll chat later. Bye now.